Sound suppression water system armed. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis. A final visit to enhance the vision of Hubble into the deepest grandeur of our universe.
Bypass across the board, Scooter, no action.
Houston now controlling, Atlantis on its way. Atlantis on its way, all three engines now throttling down as the vehicle passes through the area of maximum dynamic pressure.
Atlantis, Houston, no action on the MPS H2 out P.
Houston, we copy, no action.
Atlantis, go at throttle up.
Houston, Atlantis copies, go at throttle up.
7 miles in altitude. Altitude 49,000 feet. Flight control team discussing the minor transients that we're seeing at liftoff. All three engines are in good shape. The vehicle is headed downrange. All three hydraulic systems in good shape, as are the fuel cells. Atlantis is 18 miles and altitude, downrange 23 miles. Already traveling 2,500 miles per hour, approaching staging, the burnout of the twin solid rocket boosters, which have been burning fuel at a rate of about 11,000 pounds per second. Solid rocket boosters have done their job. Atlantis is continuing in its due easterly course to catch up with the Hubble Space Telescope one last time.
T-minus 15 seconds. The sound suppression water system has been activated.
10. VLS is go for main engine start.
We have a go for main engine start. And we have main engine start. 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery, celebrating its 25th birthday by racking up science and supplies to the space station.
Houston now controlling the midnight ride of Rick Sturckow and his crew to the International Space Station. Discovery rolling onto the proper alignment for its 8.5-minute ride to orbit. 4.5 million pounds of hardware and humans taking aim on the International Outpost. "32 seconds into the flight. The three liquid fuel main engines soon will throttle back to 72% of rated performance, down in the bucket, reducing the stress on the shuttle as it goes transonic. Discovery 3.5 miles in altitude, 4 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center. Standing by for the throttle up call now from Capcom Eric Bowe.
Discovery.
Copy, go at throttle up.
The throttle up call acknowledged by Commander Rick Sturckow, joined on the flight deck by pilot Kevin Ford, flight engineer Jose Hernandez, and Pat Forrester. Seated down on the middeck are Danny Olivas, Christopher Fugelsang of the European Space Agency, and Nicole Stott, hitching a ride for 3 months on the International Space Station. 1 minute 30 seconds into the flight. All of Discovery's systems performing normally. 17 miles in altitude, 18 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center. One minute 50 seconds into the flight. Standing by for solid rocket booster separation. Booster officer confirms staging a good solid rocket booster separation. Guidance now converging. The onboard computers steering the shuttle for its precise path to the International Space Station.
The complexity, the systems that we've brought together in this one place to do something that very few places in the world do. Launch humans to a low Earth orbit, and hopefully with a new program into farther reaches of space. So when you go to a system or a place like that, you can't help but be overwhelmed.
Every space shuttle mission began with a fiery liftoff from Launch Complex 39 at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. The launch complex for the space shuttle had two pads, Pad A and Pad B. If the launch pads demonstrated anything, it's that complex is the right word for the two pad areas that handled the shuttles for about a month before they made their trips into space. Outfitted with everything a spacecraft and its crew would need to take the final leap into space, the pads handle fueling duties and crew support and held precision machinery for a range of payloads. Its graded floors and gray paint, along with armored boxes for instruments, telephones, and elevators, revealed a style more Spartan than space age.
You always find something that you didn't know. You've got of them their entire careers out there. Even though, it's a lot of steel, a lot of wires and lights and tubing and that kind of stuff, it does it interfaces to a flight vehicle. So you have those complex interfaces, and there's always something to learn. It may look kind of Spartan, but it's got its hidden treasures.
The launch pad and all its fittings were built to withstand the brute force of a launch, which would rattle the pad with intense fire, corrosive exhaust, and thunderous sound waves.
Tested, let's put it that way. There's a tremendous amount of force that gets placed, and liftoff on the structure, on the mobile launch platform, the MLP, heat, acoustics.
Each pad featured a shallow slope concrete pyramid about 40 feet high with a flame trench carved through the middle to channel exhaust away during launch. Launch pads were first built for the Saturn V rockets of the Apollo program. Back then, the launch complex did not have any permanent service towers because the support structure was on a mobile launch platform and traveled with the rocket to the pad.
That has a real place for me.
For Shuttle, a pair of support structures called a fixed service structure, or FSS, and a rotating service structure, or RSS, were built at the pad and would remain there for all 30 years of flights. Both structures carried wiring and other infrastructure needed to support and protect a space shuttle for weeks at a time. A shuttle stack, meaning an orbiter attached to an external fuel tank and a pair of solid rocket boosters, would move to the launch pad about a month before liftoff. The shuttle was connected to networks of data cables, water lines, and the fueling system.
Unless you were out there when the workers and technicians and engineers were out there, it's hard to capture the elements of these people working together as a team, doing complex tasks, complex jobs, with a vehicle there that's just loaded with solid propellant. It could be dangerous as heck, it really is. And they did it routinely.
Each day, the RSS covered most of the shuttle and provided a clean room that safely moved space probes, space station modules, and even NASA's Hubble Space Telescope into the shuttle's cargo bay without contaminating them. Other parts of the launch pad gave workers access to most areas of the shuttle stack, which stood up to 184 feet above the surface of the mobile launcher platform. The launch pad was woven throughout with propellant lines, wiring, and machinery.
There's so many complex things out there that could literally kill you, if you did something wrong, or not just yourself, it could be, devastating. And we do it safely, routinely, day in and day out. That's testament to the workforce and to what this nation built from the Apollo era, learning through hard lessons.
Launch day was also when most of the structures at the pad came to life, mostly by remote control to keep people a safe distance away. The huge white spheres on either side of the shuttle would pump supercold liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen into the shuttle's external tank. Each propellant had to flow through long lines from the spheres about a half-mile from the shuttle.
As you get closer to launch, things just kind of step up, and you can feel it, just pure excitement, really, as you're getting closer.
The last people at the pad on launch day were the astronauts. They headed into the White Room, a kind of cramped locker room, before boarding the shuttle. With 2.5 minutes to go, the gaseous oxygen vent arm and its white beanie cap retracted from the top of the external tank, clearing the way for the launch. About 16 seconds before launch, some 300,000 gallons of water poured onto the launch pad. Though it might seem to be done to protect against the blazing fire, the water was actually for sound suppression to dampen the vibrations produced by 7 million pounds of thrust. The fire and thunder would produce a show unlike any other.
Go for main engine start. We have main engine start. 2, 1. Booster ignition and the final liftoff of Discovery. A tribute to the dedication, hard work, and pride of America's Space Shuttle team. The shuttle has cleared the tower.
Some of our team would work late shifts, so you kind of had to go home and sometimes, watch it from the river, just like the other folks would, or something like that, which I actually kind of enjoy. If I couldn't make it into center in time, just kind of being out there with a general.
Now that the space shuttle is retired, the pads are being prepared for another transition. The structures that marked the space shuttle era have been removed from Launch Pad 39B, so it can handle several different types of launchers that are expected to make up the next generation of space exploration. Pad 39A, the starting point for some of NASA's most famous flights, including Apollo 11 and the first and last shuttle flights, will look as it did during the shuttle years for the near term, echoing the thundering success of the Space Shuttle program.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, go for main engine start, 7, 6, main engine ignition, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis as Columbus sets sail on a voyage of science to the space station.
Houston now controlling.
Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Columbus weighs anchor from its port in Florida. Atlantis on the proper alignment, heads down, wings level for the 8.5-minute ride to orbit, taking aim on the International Space Station for docking on Saturday. 28 seconds into the flight. The 3 liquid fuel main engines soon will throttle back to 72% of rated performance, going in the bucket, reducing the stress on the shuttle as it breaks through the sound barrier. Atlantis 3 miles in altitude, 7 miles downrange. 50 seconds into the flight, the engine's beginning to throttle back up, standing by for that call from Capcom Jim Dutton.
Atlantis, go at throttle up.
Atlantis copies. Go at throttle up.
The throttle up call acknowledged by Commander Steve Frick, joined on the flight deck by pilot Alan Poindexter, Rex Walheim, and Leland Melvin. Seated down on the middeck are Stan Love and Hans Schlegel and Leopold Aarts of the European Space Agency. Aarts hitching a ride to his new home on the International Space Station. 1 minute, 30 seconds into the flight. Atlantis already 15 miles in altitude, 16 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, traveling 2,000 miles an hour. Three good main engines, 3 good fuel cells, 3 auxiliary power units, all functioning normally. Standing by for solid rocket booster separation. Booster officer confirms good solid rocket booster separation, good.
Space Shuttle Atlantis began its 3.4-mile journey to Launch Pad 39A in the pre-dawn darkness, leaving the Vehicle Assembly Building at NASA's Kennedy Space Center at 6:38 a.m. October 14th. Stacked with its solid rocket boosters and external fuel tank on the mobile launcher platform, the shuttle's slow roll atop a crawler transporter took approximately 6 hours, reaching the seaside launch pad in the early afternoon. At the pad, the STS-129 payload of equipment bound for the International Space Station will be installed in Atlantis Cargo Bay as technicians continue launch preparations throughout the next month. A crew of 6 astronauts will conduct this 31st Space Shuttle mission dedicated to the assembly and maintenance of the space station.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, go for main engine start. 7, 6, main engine ignition. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis as Columbus sets sail on a voyage of science to the space station.
Houston now controlling.
Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Columbus weighs anchor from its port in Florida. Atlantis on the proper alignment, heads down, wings level for the 8.5-minute ride to orbit, taking aim on the International Space Station for docking on Saturday. 28 seconds into the flight, the 3 liquid fuel main engines soon will throttle back to 72% of rated performance, going in the bucket, reducing the stress on the shuttle as it breaks through the sound barrier. Atlantis 3 miles in altitude, 7 miles downrange. 50 seconds into the flight, the engine's beginning to throttle back up, standing by for that call from Capcom Jim Dutton.
Atlantis, go at throttle up.
Atlantis copies. Go at throttle up.
The throttle up call acknowledged by Commander Steve Frick, joined on the flight deck by pilot Alan Poindexter, Rex Walheim, and Leland Melvin. Seated down on the middeck are Stan Love and Hans Schlegel and Leopold Aarts of the European Space Agency. Aarts hitching a ride to his new home on the International Space Station. 1 minute, 30 seconds into the flight. Atlantis already 15 miles in altitude, 16 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, traveling 2,000 miles an hour. Three good main engines, 3 good fuel cells, 3 auxiliary power units, all functioning normally. Standing by for solid rocket booster separation. Booster officer confirms good solid rocket booster separation, good staging.